Good guys. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that in um, literary classes in college they usually refer to as creative nonfiction. Um, and we call it creative because even though these stories are true and we're not, inserting unicorns or dragons or rainbows where they aren't, um, our memories are not always the most reliable. We're recalling things that happened sometimes years and years in the past, decades even for some of us. Um, and so to be able to reproduce that on paper, your reader kind of has to accept that you don't remember it all to the most minute details. There are things that aren't made up per se, but that you are supplying for the story's sake to make it run smoothly. Um, and so your reader kind of trusts you that it is a nonfiction piece, that you aren't just making something up about your life, but they also know that memory is fallible and it is a story that you are recording, and it's got to be interesting. It might not happen exactly the way um, that it happened in real life. Um, so going off that, I'd like to look at a couple examples from um, Glass Castle, which I think are really good to look at as examples of how to begin writing something. And obviously, that was a book you guys read, and we're writing just a paper. But if you take each chapter, um, you can kind of get a feel, for the most part, of she's writing several different incidences, right? Each chapter is its own incident narrative. The same thing we're doing, she just strings them together. Um, so let's look at this first one. So there are a lot of ways to begin, um, and sometimes they use a broad claim. And so I think this is really useful. I kind of tend to think of it almost like a thesis statement, right? Where we talk about going broad, and then we can start to kind of hone in on the main point of our topic, right? So let's look at this first one. A lot of our neighbors on North Third Street were kind of weird, right? So immediately, she doesn't give you a lot, and that's what kind of draws us in, right? We know what she's talking about, though. We know that she's going to be talking about North Third Street. She's going to be talking about her neighbors, and we know that she's going to be talking about how they're weird, right? So just off this first little sentence, we kind of can infer things, right? That they've recently moved to North Third Street, right? This is a new place for them, because if it wasn't a new place for them, they probably wouldn't be talking about their neighbors and how they're weird. If they had been there their whole life, probably wouldn't, think of them as weird. It was just those are her neighbors, right? We also know that she's going to be talking about something weird, right? And that sparks our interest, because what's weird? That makes us start to ask questions. So a broad claim like this can make you start to ask questions and draw the reader in. So the next one, city life was getting to dad. Um, so again, we kind of get context, but she doesn't give us too much information and gets us asking questions. We know she's going to be talking about city life, so we know that at one point they weren't living a city life, right? We know that she's going to be talking about her dad, and if you've read the book, as we all have, her dad's somewhat of a character. So this city life is getting to dad. What is the getting, right? Getting doesn't really give us a lot of information, but it does tell us that it's wearing on him, or something is happening with the dad um, that maybe is out of character. It keeps us guessing, but she does give us information that draws us in. The next one isn't as clear about what she's drawing us into, right? It's not um, that engaging, taken at face value, but taken in the context of the story, we know that Lori, her sister has just moved to New York, right? And New York is this comic ideal that they're reaching for, right? So when we hear that Laurie has been writing them regularly from New York, we know that Laurie is in New York, right? She arrived safely and she's established there, and she's been writing us regularly. So that means we're about to get information. We're about to see what New York is like, and so that's something we can kind of latch onto, is that we're about to get um, new information about New York, and hopefully that it's going to be positive. Um, so,
What up, dude?
recording something for class. Thank you. Another way you can open is an image, and this might have been more important for our narrative of the place, but if your incident has to do with a particular place, then this can be really helpful, right? So let's take a look at the first one. Grandma Smith's big white house had green shutters and was surrounded by eucalyptus trees. So we've heard about Grandma Smith several times in the story. So she's kind of this mysterious figure that we've heard about a little bit. We know she's rich. We know she might have a couple houses. We know, Mom grew up on a farm, and Grandma was kind of a rough and tumble lady. But setting it up that she has this big white house with green shutters and was surrounded by eucalyptus trees, it's almost this like paradise, right? And then we get the incident of them leaving the house. They're leaving paradise. So that kind of sets up a juxtaposition of where they are versus the incident that occurs. So a little bit of a complex storytelling right there. So the next one, not much grew up around Midland other than the Joshua tree, cacti, and the scrubby little curacao bushes that Dad said were some of the oldest plants on the planet. So again, this is much more concrete and gives us much more information than the broad claims at the beginning. But it still acts almost as like a topic sentence or a thesis, right? We know that we're going to be hearing about the Joshua tree, and she does come back to that, right? The mom painting it over and over, talking about the Joshua tree with her family. And then we get Dad, who is going to be introduced as this character he's a smart guy, right? He works in the mine. He knows all these weird facts that he probably shouldn't know, right? Even though he didn't have a degree or anything, we get an example of how smart he is right here. He said there's some of the oldest plants on the planet. He knows about these kind of obscure bushes, right? These things in the middle of nowhere. So that points to the fact that we're going to be hearing more about this, right? More about Dad and what Dad can do. And then we get kind of, it's not really a cold open, but it's something that really hooks on to you.